Welcome back to the Daily Move. This is week 4, day 2. Today you're going to need some kind of stick and something to put your hands on just to lift you off the ground a little bit. I used a foam roller and a cooler, but if you've got some yoga blocks, that would work perfect. So grab what you need and we're going to get started today. So we're going to start standing with the stick on our shoulders, just creating some nice spinal twists here. Not necessarily forcing anything, just whatever feels good. You can keep your feet planted or you can allow them to kind of move with this motion, whatever feels good. And you can play with tempo, going slow and exploring the range, or you can speed it up to warm up the spine. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to aim the stick down towards our foot here into a triangle position, feeling a nice stretch into the lat that's facing the ceiling. And again, you can switch sides at your own pace. You can stay on one side for a little bit longer, or you can switch back and forth quickly. Whatever feels good. So next we're going to take a wide stance here, going into a really deep lunge here. You should feel a nice stretch in the straight leg and the adductors. And now we're just warming up the knee as we bend it, going from side to side. Next, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to go to the side and then we're going to face forward to go into a forward lunge and then back into that side lunge. We're going to do 3 in one way and then repeat this again 3 times on the opposite side. Make sure to work within the range that you have. If anything feels wrong, just shorten the range. So next we're going to take the stick, we're going to touch our toes, go into a deep squat, bring the stick overhead, and then stand back up. So touching your toes, deep squat. Bring your hands up, feeling a nice stretch into the shoulders before you stand on up. So next what you're going to do here is you're going to allow your knees to touch the floor and then come back up. This is going to be a nice stretch for the bottom of your feet here. And the goal here is for that both kneecaps touch the ground at the same time and also leave at the same time, working on that control. To make this easier, just maybe put a pillow underneath your knees just to raise up that target point. So next what we're going to do here is a reverse Nordic curl, and what that means is that you're kneeling and you're leaning back to feel your quads engage. And then you're going to use your quads to come back up. Now you can play with your toes tucked under or with a flat foot. I find I get a better engagement with my toes tucked under. Next, you're going to lay on your back and we're going to twist the towel here. So you're going to cross one leg over the other and you're going to twist your hips and look in the opposite direction, kind of like you're wringing out a towel. And you're just going to switch directions here, doing 3 a side, so 6 in total here. Nice little spinal twist here. So next we're going to go into a kneeling stance here. And what you want to do is tuck your pelvis under and lean forward slightly. Really working on tucking that pelvis under and not leaning too far forward yet. We're going to hold here for a few seconds before we really lunge forward into a deep lunge here. So now we're going to head on into a deeper stretch here. next you're gonna lean back, keeping your foot on the ground, feeling a nice stretch into the hamstrings. And sometimes if I'm really tight, I might even feel a stretch into the tibia anterior, which is that muscle that's in front of your shin. Next, you're gonna cross over, going into a pigeon stretch here. Again, working with the range that you have. And now we're going to repeat that on the opposite leg, starting with that pelvis tuck, feeling a nice stretch into the hip flexor. And then you're going to go into a deep lunge here. Next, you're going to send your hips back, keeping your foot flat on the ground, feeling a stretch into that hamstring. And if your shin is really tight, you may feel it there as well. Crossing that leg over, going into a pigeon. And you should feel your glute here. So keep holding this pigeon stretch. I'm just letting you know you're going to want those blocks or something to hold on to. Again, I'm going to use a foam ruler and a cooler, so anything that you have available. So you're going to be in a half kneeling position here, and we're working tibial internal external rotation. So we have two bones that go from our kneecap down to our ankle. And those bones there, what we're trying to do is rotate them in and rotate them out. So it looks like our foot is turning in and out, but really we're moving it up at the knee joint. So next what we're going to do is hip internal external rotation with our foot planted. So you can see here I'm letting that knee dive in as far as it can go and then out to the side. You may have to move your props out of the way so that you can figure out what that end range is. So next we're going to explore internal external rotation with the foot lifted. So we're going to lift it up and see how far we can rotate. So your femur bone is your big thigh bone, and we're trying to turn it as far as we can using our muscles. So next what we're going to do is we're going to hip flex. We're going to bring that knee up towards our chest and then straighten out that leg. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can rotate the leg around our block there. So you're peeing on a fire hydrant, doing that rotation at that hip bone, and then you're bringing the leg in towards the center line and then repeating that in the opposite direction. Trying to keep your body as stable as possible so it's not our spine that has to move to compensate to get that leg around. I have a love-hate relationship with this exercise. I hate it in the moment because it's kind of crampy, but afterwards my hips just feel so good afterwards. So next what I'm going to do here is hip extension. So I'm going to put my knee on either of those blocks, and what I'm using here is a cooler. And what I'm doing here is using my glutes to lift the leg off the cooler, holding for a few seconds before lowering it back down. Now be mindful here, it's really easy to cheat by arching your back. So try to keep your back as neutral as possible as you lift that leg up. And now it's time for the other side. So we're going to do the same thing here, working on that tibial internal external rotation. And you can see with my hand there, I'm just monitoring it so that where the movement is coming from isn't cheating by you trying to use my hip, because it's really easy to cheat using your hip. And it's easy to cheat using your ankle as well. You know you're cheating with your ankle if it starts to curl upwards, if there's space underneath your foot in the ground. So next is that hip internal external rotation with your foot planted. Again, you may need to move your props in order to have more movement space. Letting that knee dive in and bringing it back out. Next, we're going to lift that leg up and then do that hip internal external rotation again, allowing your ankle to kind of move free with this motion. Again, trying to get all this range from your hip and not your back. Okay, next we're going to travel over that we're going to straighten the knee. So we're going to lift the leg up towards our chest, straighten out the knee, and repeat that a few times. And now we're going to pick it up and rotate it over top of either our cooler or our yoga blocks, whatever you may be using. So peeing on that fire hydrant, creating that rotation, and then bringing that knee back into the center line. And then on the way back, you're picking it up, rotating the leg outwards, and then spinning into that hip internal rotation before bringing that knee back down to meet the other leg. So next, we've got that hip extension. So you're bringing the knee onto your blocks, and you're trying to lift your leg up towards the ceiling, only using your butt muscles, trying not to create too much of an arch into the back. So next we're going to go back into this hip flexor series, and you may notice that you have a little bit more range than the first time we went into this. So the first one is just tucking that pelvis underneath and just holding here for a few seconds before we get into that deeper lunge stretch. And now sinking into that hip. Now you're going to push back, keeping your foot flat on the ground. Feeling a nice stretch on the back of your leg into the hamstring. And if your shin's tight, you may feel it there too. Going back into that pigeon stretch. This is usually where I notice the biggest change. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the opposite side. Tucking that pelvis under, hanging out here for a couple seconds before we sink into that deeper lunge. And now pushing the hips back, leaning forward, feeling a stretch into the back of the leg. And then lastly, going into that pigeon, crossing that leg over. Deep breaths here. breathing into that tension to let it go. So next we're going to sit here in a deep squat, and you can just hang out here, or if you want you can try to externally rotate that leg, pushing the knee out. And all I'm doing here is just alternating sides. Next we're going to go into hip internal rotation, where I drop the knee down into the center line. So next we're going to go into this hip 90-90 position. And you're trying to pick up the back leg as far as you can. And you're going to do that 3 times. On the 3rd time, you're going to keep going and then lift up the other leg to transition into the hip 90-90 into the opposite direction. Pick up that back leg, and on the 3rd time, continue it so that it changes your direction. Try to sit up nice and tall here. This is a great way to work that hip external rotation. Now we're going to lean over that front leg and then transition. Lean over that front leg and transition. Again, feeling a stretch into the glute here. So now you're going to go into the 90-90, and then you're going to squeeze your glutes to pop on up. Continue doing this transition for a few more reps. Next, you're going to need that cooler or those yoga blocks back. And what we're going to go is on our hands and knees here, putting our knee out onto our block. And you're using your glutes here to be able to take that knee off the ground. So try not to rotate your pelvis too much. Watching this footage back, it actually shows that I'm lifting up my pelvis a little bit too much here. I should be keeping that down. Really trying to get my glutes to do it. Now, you can just continue to pick up the knee, or if you want a harder variation, you can try straightening out the knee. After you've done 5 to 6 reps of either version, we're going to switch sides and repeat the same thing. Try to keep your back nice and flat here. We're trying to use our glute muscles to be able to do that hip external rotation, what we've been working on. And if that's too easy at the top there, you can hold it and then straighten out the knee. Next, you're going to lay on your back, placing your legs up on the cooler, and you've got a few different options here. You can keep your legs nice and straight, And then you want to put the heels down in order to lift up the glutes, or you can put a slight bend into the knees, and then it's almost like you're dragging the heels towards your glutes. We're trying to engage the hamstrings here, so the muscles on the back side of your thigh. Now you can continue with this, or you can get up and try to drag yourself using your heel. So what I'm doing here is I'm sticking my heel into the ground, engaging my hamstrings in order to change where my body position is. So I try to pull it towards that foot. Now I didn't have a lot of space here to work with, but you can actually start traveling where you actually pick up the leg and then move it into a different direction. So feel free to play around with this. This is going to be our last movement of today. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe and share the video with anyone that you think would benefit from this. All right, I'll catch you for the next daily move. Bye.